Hello, my name is Chloe. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing to you my November wrap-up. So November was actually a pretty decent reading month for me. I read 17 books, which equated to 5,786 pages. I did do some additional stats this month in just comparing what I read last month to this month. So the pages I read were 2.8% lower than October. The number of books was exactly the same, 17. That was made up by 14 physical books and 3 audiobooks. So that was 4 more physical over audio than last month. I read an average of 193 pages per day, which is an increase of 1 page per day. And the average length of the books I was reading was 340 pages, which was a decrease of 10 pages per book. My physical TBR had a great hit in November. I'm so proud of myself. So we started at 435 books. I then read 16 books from my physical TBR. I only hauled 5, and that left me with an updated TBR of 424 books. So this is the second month in a row where my TBR has gone down. So let's celebrate the wins when we can. Because I have 17 books to talk to you guys about, I don't want to really be spending more than 1 minute per book. I will try and keep these brief. Apologies if you do like the longer talking, but I don't want to keep you guys here forever. The ratings were broken down like so. So I had 1 1-star book, 2 2-stars, 1 2.5. I don't have enough hands for this, I'm holding my notebook. I had 6 3-star books, 3 3.5 stars, 1 4.5 star, and 3 5-star reads. The 1-star book I had this month was Leave the World Behind by Ruman and Lamb. I really disliked this, I'm sorry to say. It was branded to me as a thriller, and the back of the book makes it sound like a thriller, but this was just too atmospheric for my liking. I do agree with people who give this great reviews because what they love about it is what I hate about it. It is just no plot, like head empty, just vibes is this book. We are in an end of the world situation. Or are we? We're following a family who go out to like an Airbnb vacation home. They are having a lovely time, and then all of a sudden the owners of the house turn up and basically tell them that the world is ending and that they have to now share their space with this random old couple while they figure things out. I was not a fan. I did soft DNF it and then pick it back up to finish it, and I wish I would have left at the soft DNF. So I've spoken to a few people since who have soft DNF'd. I would advise that you just hard DNF it and move on, but I have seen people who love this book. Next up, the first 2-star book I have is Those Who Lie by Diane Jeffrey. I really disliked this. Again, I'm sorry to say. This is a mystery thriller. We're following Emily, who doesn't know that she has killed her husband until she has woken up in the hospital and it has already been his funeral. All signs are pointing to a tragic accident, but Emily comes under fire as a potential suspect in murdering her husband. There are lots of different mini mysteries in this book, and that is actually why I didn't like it. So lots of things that you were introduced to and then 10 pages later you had a solution, rather than building up for the reveal of the big secret on why this accident happened. I felt like by the time we got to the end of the book, even the author didn't care about what the accident was actually for. There were so many additional mysteries that the reason why you've picked up this book does not become the main focus of the story, and it really irritated me. So yeah, 2 stars for this one, and yeah, I didn't like it. The other 2-star book I had, and I'm like really sorry to be holding this up, is The Call. This one, I just feel like it had such a good premise, but it was executed like not in a way that I wanted, which is a me problem. But this is a society where I still don't know why this happens. But anyway, as teenagers, at some point in your teenage years, you will be called by the call. And 3 minutes and 4 seconds later, you will reappear in your world. So you disappear completely. 3 minutes and 4 seconds later, you will reappear, either alive or dead. Most often dead, and with some strange body modification that no one can explain. One thing I did love about this book, which is hard to say because, you know, I gave it 2 stars, but our main character has cerebral palsy. I believe that is how the author has explained it outside of the book. It doesn't necessarily say that inside the book, but there is quite a large focus on how she is perceived to be weaker for the call than her other like teenage classmates who are training physically, and she can't quite keep up, but she still feels like she is prepared and she finds ways to adapt. And I really did like the inclusion of that in here. But yeah, overall, I didn't really like this book. It didn't do what I wanted it to do, which is that a me problem? Probably. But it didn't tick all my boxes. I didn't have the best time with it. I do know people that absolutely love this book though, so maybe I'm just being too harsh, but it just wasn't what I wanted. Next up, the 2.5-star book I read was 13 Minutes by Sarah Pinborough. I have a real vendetta against this book because I genuinely owned it for about 6 years before I read it, and when I finally read it, I didn't like it. So this follows a group of like teenage mean girl friends. One of the girls in the friendship group is saved from a river where she is technically dead, and she is rescued by a passerby. And as soon as she kind of starts integrating back into her life, she feels like it could have been her friends who were out to get her. There is a lot of like mixed media elements in this, which I find really fun. I always love that in a mystery thriller. This is a YA, so sometimes the twists and turns are easier to guess because looking back as adults, we can see exactly what the author's going to do. So the twists and turns didn't really shock me. My main issue with this is it probably didn't have to be this long. So it's 400 pages long, and 400 pages in a YA thriller, I feel like you're just giving yourself far too many times to switch and change on the story. What's actually hilarious now I'm saying this is I cannot remember how this ended, and I only read it like 2 weeks ago. So I feel like that isn't the markings of a great book. I'm definitely glad that I read it. I'm glad that I finally got round to it. I just wish I wouldn't have left it on my TBR for so long, because I hyped up how good this was going to be when I finally read it, and didn't hit the spot. So I now have 6 3-star books, and I'm going to go through them kind of quick fire because I have none of them in front of me. They have all moved on in my life, and a lot of them were actually novellas, so I don't feel like there's as much to say. The first one being A Children's Bible by Lydia Millett. This was very interesting. I still don't quite know what I read. We were following a group of children who had gone away on kind of a group family vacation, and they decide to leave the parents to their own devices. The parents are just drunk and doing drugs, and they're like, no, we're gonna go do our own thing. We're all gonna stay and have big sleepovers. And then the world starts ending, and the children have to kind of pitch together to fix things because the adults aren't capable. It was a very interesting book, and I have actually passed it on to somebody who is way more literary intelligent, that's not even a word, to get their opinion, to see what I maybe was missing, whether it is actually good or whether I was just baffled the whole time. Another one where I was baffled the whole time is Earthlings. So this is about a very interesting group of people who basically decide that they're aliens and that they have been forced to live amongst the Earthlings, and they don't have to conform to the same standards. I don't really know how to explain this book. If you want something really weird where you finish it and you're like, what on earth just happened? Did I enjoy it or did I not? Earthlings is a good one. I then read A Fur Love Story by Lone Lee, and again I hope I've pronounced that word right. This is a YA contemporary. It's quite a cute little romance. We're talking Romeo and Juliet with rival Vietnamese restaurants. I have nothing positive and nothing negative really to say here. It's a cute story. We're talking teenagers who do what they want to do rather than what their parents want them to do. We're getting to the bottom of a family feud that has existed for generations. Very easygoing, very light-hearted, very Romeo and Juliet-esque. Would recommend it. I actually listened to the audio and flew through it. So it was a cute time, but I'm not like bouncing off the walls raving about it. Next up, I read Magma, which was a very interesting book. This one was actually a gift from Victoria from a little while ago, and I'm so glad I picked it up. It is the strangest told like romance, literary fiction kind of story where a woman becomes obsessed with a man in her college years, and it's basically that nothing he can do is wrong and she will do anything to keep him. The way it's written just makes this obsession feel so valid, and you really start to feel for her. It covers many dark potentially triggering topics, so please do look into that if you are wanting to read this book. I'm so glad I read it. I was potentially going to keep it around because it was such a fast read, but also dealt with some difficult topics, but I just didn't love it that much by the ending to hold on to it forever. Next up we have Rules for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall, and this is a YA horror. I really liked the premise of this story. It is an old game where if you do a certain practice on a certain day, you will be joined into this walk through the woods to find Lucy Gallows. Lucy Gallows died hundreds of years ago in strange circumstances, so by going on the walk you get to try and find her. I really liked how the idea of this story and the progressing through the walk and the big reveal at the end of what is actually happening, but unfortunately I really struggled with the horror side of it. So I mentioned this in a vlog where I'm not fully convinced either way, but I don't think I can see pictures in my brain, which sounds really dumb if you can see pictures in your brain. Like, how would I not know? But I just got very lost. So while the teenagers are doing this walk and there are things looking at them from somewhere, stuff is happening, the route is changing, a house appears, there's a man stood in the road, all this stuff, there was quite a lot of jumping around and chopping and changing, and that is because of the horror nature of it, but I just couldn't see it. And it was really disorientating, and I got lost several times in my own brain. So I limited it at 3 stars because I just really struggled to figure out what was going on sometimes, but I don't necessarily say this is a bad book at all. And my final 3-star read is Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente, or Valent. This is an incredibly weird novella. I seem to have a bit of a hit for those this month. This is about a gated community where everything is perfect. We can tell straight away that something isn't quite right with our main character. It's kind of described as a horror. I wouldn't go that far. It did completely go a different way than I was expecting, so I wouldn't necessarily say that is a bad thing. It just wasn't what I thought was going to happen. I feel like I wanted a valid explanation for things, but it was actually just incredibly weird, which didn't make it bad. It just lost me a little bit at the end. So I would recommend this for a really messed up time, but it didn't knock my socks off. Next up, we have our 3.5-star reads. The first one being If You Dare by A.R. Tor. This is the 3rd and final book in the Deanna Madden series that starts with the girl in 6E. I really liked the 1st and 2nd book in this series. This one was a little bit of a letdown to me. I can't tell you much about the storyline because that would give away things from previous books, but we're following our character Deanna, who is put in a situation where she can't remember what happened, but not remembering what happened could mean that she murdered someone. I really like Deanna's character. I feel like I've really got to know her over the past however many books. I put this book off for so long because I didn't want to finish the series. I'm glad I finally did it. I'm upset that it's a little bit of a letdown, but overall I would still recommend the series as a whole. Next up we have Betrayed by PC and Kristen Cast, which is book 2 of the House of Night series. I really enjoyed this. It was fun, it was easy, and it's technically a reread from about 10, maybe 12 years ago. We're following Zoe, who is settling into the House of Night, which is basically a school for fledgling vampires. She has been given special powers by the goddess Nyx, and she's learning how to deal with those powers, how to deal with being a fledgling vampire, but also dealing with teenage drama. I did really like this one. I found it much more entertaining than book 1. It's just such a blast from the past and I really did enjoy it. There is one devastating moment that I remember sobbing at when I was a teenager, but I knew it was coming this time, so it didn't really affect me as much as it did then. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this again and have continued on with the series since this. And my final 3.5 star is Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. I actually have a vlog coming your way very soon about my full feelings on this book, but this is one of the darkest romances I've ever read. 3.5 stars does feel a little bit high for how I've actually come out of the book feeling now that I've been able to reflect on it, but I've seen this bouncing around the internet because of how dark and depraved it is, and I have to agree that it is more disgusting than romantic. Our main character is actually an insane stalker and he stalks the love interest. They've actually called it the cat and mouse duology because he, as the cat, is genuinely stalking the mouse. I haven't put like an adult warning on this video, so I won't say too much, but the interactions at the start are definitely non-consensual and it's kind of uncomfortable to read, but some parts of the story did make me enjoy it. There was like a storyline to follow, so I gave it 3.5 stars. But yeah, I would not be recommending this as a romance. Just 4 books left now already. This is crazy. So the 4.5-star book this month was The Phantom Prince, My Life with Ted Bundy by Elizabeth Kendall. This is a book written by the girlfriend of Ted Bundy and I found it so utterly fascinating. I don't normally give numbered ratings to non-fiction, especially true crime, but the way this was written by Liz as a look back at her life, she's also gone back and added a different like intro afterward since publishing the book the first time, because this was republished. So I thought with the work to go in to tell the story of her life and actually the writing, I was able to give it a numbered rating. Liz was with Ted for 6 years and there were many ups and downs through that time, and she also had a daughter, Molly. Molly's afterward in this book upped my rating from a 4 to a 4.5 like instantly. I thought it was so just heartbreaking and emotional, and the ability to write that is just fantastic, so I had to bump it up. If you have any sort of interest in true crime, I would be recommending this book. I felt like I knew a lot about Ted Bundy, but reading him from his girlfriend's point of view was just wild to me. I'm so glad I read it, and yeah, I'll be thinking about this one for a long time. Okay, we now have 3 5-star reads. One is a reread, so I'll talk about that one first. But my reread that I gave 5 stars to is of course Breaking Dawn by Stephanie Meyer. I read this one for the however many numbered time, and I actually tabbed and annotated it. I had such an amazing time with this. I love this book so much, and I actually vlogged like the minute after I finished this and I was still so emotional. So the Twilight series has ended up making such an impact on my life, and rereading the final book just gave me so much emotion and love for it all over again. I understand it's not the best written thing in the world, but just going back and re-experiencing it meant a lot to me. Obviously, I can't tell you too much about Twilight. It's Twilight, but this one just blows me away, and if I could just reread that last page every day for the rest of my life, I probably would. Okay, we have 2 5 stars left to go, and this is where my end of the year content has got a little bit out of whack. Because I'm going away, I have pre-filmed my best books of the year because I genuinely didn't think anything else I have planned was gonna beat anything. So I have one here that I would probably say is my highest rated for the month, but I can't give it the recognition it deserves in my best book, so I'll leave you waiting on that one. The second 5-star book I read was Confess by Colleen Hoover. I really did enjoy this. This one I was not expecting to give 5 stars, but the emotion it got out of me was insane. I cried in the first 10 pages, and I said if I got to the end of the book and it gave me the same feeling as it did in the first 5 pages, it would be a 5 star. And in those last couple of pages, I was a sobbing mess. So we're following Auburn, who had a very tragic past. Her boyfriend, when she was 15, 16, had cancer, I believe, and he actually died. So she is trying to rebuild her life X number of years later, and she falls on her feet with a last-minute job at an artist's selling, what's it called, like an auction night, like a, I don't know. He's selling his paintings one night and his name is Owen. So she lands on her feet with this little job, and she ends up having a very deep connection with Owen, and she wants to pursue that. But at the same time, she's also trying to fix her life since the death of her teenage boyfriend. And I just felt like there were so many complex issues in this book. I know that some people do not like Colleen Hoover, and I will fully respect that opinion, but this one just really did hit me emotionally, and I'm very glad I read it. This is basically all about having secrets and whether you can disclose those secrets to the people around you, and will they stay in your life after knowing them. So I really did enjoy this, and yeah, 5 stars. So the 5 star that sadly is not going to make it on my best books of the year list, but just know that in knowledge it's there, is An Offer from a Gentleman by Julia Quinn. This is book 2 in the Bridgerton series, and I did not think I was going to love it this much, but this made me so happy. This is the book following Benedict Bridgerton, and he meets Sophie Beckett one night at a masquerade ball. He doesn't know who she is, but after a couple of hours together, the clock strikes midnight and she runs away, leaving only her glove behind. Does it sound familiar? Because I'm sure it does. This is basically a rip-off of Cinderella, but I had such a fantastic time with it. The romance was done so well. I know there are issues with Bridgerton books, particularly the first one, but I love number 2, and it turns out I love number 3 as well. I've heard it goes downhill from here, but for now, I'm very happy that I've read this book, and I cannot wait to continue on with the series. So there we have it. That is my wrap up for November with the 17 books I read. Have you got any opinions on any of these books? Please do let me know down in the comments. I would love to chat to you guys about them. But so that I can give my voice a rest, that is all I have time for today. Thank you very, very much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.